Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Whenever a book is adapted to the screen, an inevitable dilemma arises. Should every line be preserved verbatim, or is it acceptable to take liberties for the sake of cinematic effect? Every adaptation is a compromise between the literary original and the language of cinema. And although most changes are guided by the logic of storytelling, they often cause viewers to accept invented details as part of the original canon. In the world of Harry Potter, such cases are especially common. Some scenes were reimagined so convincingly that even attentive readers begin to question, was this really in the book? Today, we'll explore precisely those moments. Enjoy watching. Number 1. Bellatrix on the Astronomy Tower. In one of the pivotal scenes of Half-Blood Prince, when Snape kills Dumbledore atop the Astronomy Tower, Bellatrix Lestrange is among the witnesses of the tragedy. Her presence adds emotional intensity and a sinister tone to the scene. However, in the book, Bellatrix is not there. Most likely, the filmmakers simply couldn't resist bringing Helena Bonham Carter's magnetic villainess back on screen. The creative choice felt so natural that many viewers didn't question its canonicity for a second. Number 2. Cho Chang's betrayal. In Order of the Phoenix, the Ministry of Magic's iron grip on Hogwarts drives students to form a secret group, Dumbledore's Army, to learn defensive spells on their own. In the film, Cho Chang is portrayed as the one who accidentally betrays the group to Umbridge, creating a highly emotional fallout that ends her relationship with Harry and sparks viewer outrage. But in the book, the blame lies with another student, Marietta Edgecombe, Cho's friend. This subtle difference can easily fade from memory, especially if the book was read long ago, yet it completely alters how Cho's character is perceived. Number 3. Harry and Luna Lovegood. Luna Lovegood's portrayal in the films is so endearing that it's hard to imagine her relationship with Harry in any other light. In the cinematic version, he embraces her eccentricities without irritation, admires her unique mind, and even invites her to Slughorn's party, calling her cool. All of this creates an impression of a special emotional bond. In the books, however, Harry's attitude toward Luna is more restrained. He respects and pities her, but often feels awkward around her. His invitation to the party is more impulsive, a response to his own sense of isolation. This contrast makes the film version of Luna slightly idealized. Number 4. Snape's composure. Alan Rickman crafted such a mesmerizing and cold portrayal of Severus Snape that it's easy to forget how different the character is in the books. The literary Snape often loses his temper, succumbs to rage, and acts on impulse. His behavior can at times feel childish. He yells, accuses, spits, and even loses control in front of other teachers. In the films, he becomes a more stoic figure, almost a dark philosopher on a secret mission. While this interpretation benefits the film's tone, it also renders Snape less human, more distant, and harder to emotionally connect with. Number 5. The first task of the Triwizard Tournament. One of the most thrilling sequences in Goblet of Fire is Harry's frantic flight across Hogwarts as he tries to evade a ferocious dragon. Stones fly, rooftops collapse, and the boy soars through the air in a breathtaking chase. It's a truly cinematic spectacle, but in the book, the duel takes place entirely within a contained arena under the watchful eye of the judges. No dragon ever escapes, and Hogwarts is never in danger. This scene is a clear example of visual drama taking precedence over narrative accuracy. Yet for many viewers, it's the action that brings the story to life. Number 6. The zoo incident, falling into the reptile enclosure. One of the first magical moments in Philosopher's Stone is the vanishing of the glass that separates Harry from a boa constrictor. In the film, the scene is heightened. Dudley crashes into the now empty enclosure and finds himself trapped with the massive snake. But in the book, the event is much subtler. Dudley merely recoils from the vanishing glass with a scream. He never actually falls in. Later, he exaggerates the story, claiming the snake tried to bite him. This change likely served a visual purpose, as the dramatic fall plays far better on screen. Number 7. The Burrow burns down. Flames rise over the marsh. In Half-Blood Prince, the film shows Bellatrix Lestrange and Fenrir Greyback attacking the Burrow. Harry and Ginny chase them into the reeds. Fire surrounds them. The Weasleys scream. The house burns. It's chaos. The moment is terrifying and deeply personal. The Burrow, the heart of Harry's safe world, is reduced to ash. Many viewers assumed it happened in the books. It felt too real not to. But the attack never happened. In the novel, the Burrow remains untouched. No fire, no ambush, no chase through the swamp. It stands always as a place of comfort and safety. Even when danger spreads across the wizarding world, the Burrow stays whole. It's where Mrs. Weasley knits sweaters, where Arthur Weasley charms Muggle plugs, where Harry is reminded of what family looks like. Rowling never tears it down. The film invented the fire to raise the stakes, to show that no place was safe, not even home. But in doing so, it took something precious. The Burrow wasn't just a house, it was hope, warmth, resilience. Destroying it might have made for great cinema. But the books knew better. Some things, like love and loyalty, should stand no matter what burns. Number 8. You have your mother's eyes. Snape is dying. Blood pools on the floor of the boathouse. Voldemort has turned on him. Harry kneels beside him, stunned and silent. In the film, Snape looks up and whispers, "You have your mother's eyes." It lands like a dagger, a confession, a farewell. For many, that line is unforgettable, a final bridge between his love for Lily and his protection of Harry. It feels like the perfect ending to his story. But the book offers something simpler, something colder. Rowling doesn't give Snape a final speech. No last-minute poetry. Just one request, barely a whisper. "Look, me." That's all. No mention of Lily. No mention of her eyes. Just a dying man asking to see the one thing he's protected for 17 years. The eyes that remind him of the only person he ever loved. It's raw. It's brutal. It's silent. The film needed closure. It wanted the audience to understand Snape's heart in one line. But the book doesn't hand it over so easily. It makes you work for it. Snape's memories, revealed only after his death, show the truth. Lily's eyes weren't just a detail. They were his redemption. But in the book he never says it out loud, and maybe that silence speaks louder. Number 9. Harry and Hermione's dance. The tent is quiet. Rain falls outside. In the film Deathly Hallows Part 1, Harry walks over to the radio and turns on music. Hermione stands frozen, grieving Ron's departure. Harry offers his hand. They dance, slowly, awkwardly. Then they laugh. It's tender, intimate, a moment that suggests comfort, maybe even something more. For many viewers, it felt like a turning point, like love unspoken. But the book never gives them that moment. There is no dance, no music, no soft lighting. After Ron leaves, grief fills the tent like fog. Hermione cries constantly. Harry feels helpless watching her break. Rowling writes, Hermione refused to speak to him and he didn't know what to say. There's no laughter, no gesture of warmth to bridge the silence. The friendship is strained, real, broken by fear and by absence. It's not poetic, it's painful. The film gave them a scene to breathe, to remind us that friendship can survive despair, but it wasn't canon, it wasn't Harry, and it wasn't Hermione. In the book, they endure the silence because they must, not because they dance through it. Number 10. Dumbledore's wand design. In the films, Dumbledore's wand is unmistakable, long, dark, with carved nodes running along the shaft, like bones or beads. It looks ancient, powerful, alien. When it changes hands, from Dumbledore to Draco and later to Harry, it remains visually iconic. You know the Elder Wand the second you see it. It became a piece of film mythology, easily recognized in posters, toys, and merchandise. But in the books, the wand hides in plain sight. Rowling never gives it a dramatic description. No carvings, no runes, no glowing aura, just a wand. When Grigorovich speaks of it, or when Dumbledore mentions it, The focus is on its power, not its shape. The Elder Wand, the most powerful wand ever made, he says, not the most ornate. Its legend is carried by history and fear, not by design. The idea was that it could be anywhere with anyone. The films turned it into a relic. The books kept it disguised. That choice mattered. In the books, the Elder Wand is terrifying because of what it can do, not how it looks. It's the invisible weapon behind centuries of bloodshed. In the films, the wand is a character itself, flashing across the screen in close-up, humming with force. The visual effect works, but it breaks the mystery. Sometimes, magic is stronger when you can't see it. Number 11. Harry's Patronus form. In the movies, Harry's Patronus is always a stag. From the first time he casts it in The Prisoner of Azkaban, the silvery deer leaps into view, majestic and complete. It feels natural. He is his father's son, after all. James Potter's animagus form was a stag. The film leans into that symbolism early. It turns the Patronus into a kind of instant legacy, a glowing magical echo of the man Harry never truly knew. But the books tell a slower story, a more human one. When Harry first attempts the spell in Lupin's office, he produces nothing more than a faint wisp. Harry raised his wand, a silvery something shot out of it, but it was only a wisp of smoke. Even during the Quidditch match where Dementors appear in the sky, his Patronus is incomplete. He tries again and again, always a blur. The shape, the meaning. It only becomes clear later, in the frozen chaos by the Black Lake, where he finally casts a full-bodied Patronus to save Sirius and his past self. Only then does the stag reveal itself, galloping silently away across the surface of the lake. The moment is earned, hard-won. It's not just magic, it's understanding, it's memory, it's Harry connecting to James, not by blood, but by courage. The film skips that journey. It gives us the answer before we've felt the question. But in the book, the stag arrives when Harry is ready, not when the story needs a pretty shape in the light. Number 12. Hermione repairs Harry's glasses. In the Philosopher's Stone film, Hermione Granger meets Harry Potter for the first time on the Hogwarts Express. She points at his glasses with confident ease, flicks her wand and says, "Oculus reparo." The cracked lenses fix themselves in an instant. It's quick, charming, and unforgettable. That one spell tells us everything. Hermione is brilliant, resourceful, and already taking care of Harry before they even reach school. For millions of fans, this scene became a defining memory of her character. But it never happened in the book. In J.K. Rowling's version, Hermione doesn't cast reparo on the train. In fact, she never mends Harry's glasses at all. The first time Oculus reparo is even mentioned comes later in the series. When Harry arrives at the Burrow in Chamber of Secrets, he stumbles out of the Floo network and lands flat on his face. His glasses are cracked. Arthur Weasley taps them with his wand and says, "Oculus reparo," repairing them without a second thought. That's the moment. Not Hermione, not the train, and not their first meeting. The film rewrote it to give Hermione an early, magical victory. And it worked so well that most viewers believe it's canon. But it quietly took a moment away from Arthur Weasley, a character who always fixed things quietly, in the background. Rowling didn't rush to show off Hermione's brilliance. She let it unfold slowly. The movie, eager to introduce her as the clever one, moved the spell to her hands. And just like that, a father's small act of kindness was lost in translation. Hermione was still clever, still brave, still unforgettable. But this tiny rewrite changed a first impression. What was originally Arthur's warmth became Hermione's spotlight. And for many fans, the train scene, though never written, felt just as real as anything in the books. Number 13. The Weasley Twins firework exit. Fred and George Weasley didn't just leave Hogwarts, they made history. In the Order of the Phoenix movie, their exit is pure cinema. Thunderous fireworks explode across the Great Hall, students scream in joy, and Dolores Umbridge stands frozen in rage. As the twins soar out of the building on broomsticks, a triumphant orchestral score swells. It's loud, glorious, unforgettable. To many fans, that scene became the symbol of rebellion, of defiance, of two red-headed boys showing the world that fun could still be a weapon. But in the book, their departure is quieter, faster. J.K. Rowling doesn't score the moment with music. There's no grand gathering, no full student audience gasping in unison. Instead, Fred and George act with calculated mischief. They set off fireworks earlier to torment Umbridge, yes, but when they actually leave Hogwarts, it's in the middle of a commotion they helped create. They do not pause for applause, they simply vanish. Rowling writes, Fred looked around at the assembled students and at the silent, watchful crowd of teachers. "Ready, George?" "Ready, Fred." And together they raised their wands and shouted, "Actio brooms!" They ride out on their broomsticks, but they're not chased by slow-motion camera angles or Hollywood strings. They fly off while chaos reigns around them. Students don't cheer wildly, they're shocked, impressed. But this isn't a planned spectacle for a crowd. It's an escape, a farewell, a well-timed prank. The line that follows shows their philosophy. "We won't be seeing you," Fred told Umbridge, grinning widely. "Don't bother to keep in touch." Then they vanish into the night. The movie chose fire and thunder. The book gave us precision and speed. Both versions work, but only one stays true to how Fred and George lived their lives, not as warriors leading a revolution, but as brilliant jokers running rings around the system. Fans often remember the music, the spectacle, but the twins didn't need a soundtrack. Just a good plan, a couple of brooms, and a laugh. Number 14. Destruction of the London Bridge. The sky over London is grey, oppressive, and trembling with the silent weight of fear. In the opening minutes of the film Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, it is not the soft glow of a new school year or the cosy charm of Diagon Alley that greets us, but the chaos of collapsing steel and screaming muggles. The Millennium Bridge, a sleek, modern footbridge spanning the River Thames, twists and shatters, sending people plunging into the river. Death Eaters, cloaked in black, sweep through the sky like shadows cast by war. It is a cinematic image designed to jolt, to establish stakes, to whisper that the world is unraveling. But it is also a lie. This dramatic scene has led countless viewers to believe that the destruction of the Millennium Bridge is part of J.K. Rowling's original narrative. It is not. Nowhere in the pages of Half-Blood Prince does such an event occur. The chaos in the Muggle world is real, yes. The creeping dread, the unexplained disasters, the vanishing of people, these are all present in the book. But a bridge collapsing into the Thames, fabricated, invented, a Hollywood-born flourish with no roots in the text. What Rowling wrote was quieter, more suggestive than explicit. In the first chapter of Half-Blood Prince, entitled The Other Minister, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is visited by Cornelius Fudge. Their conversation provides insight into the spread of Voldemort's influence. There is mention of collapsed bridges, strange weather, and disappearing people. But it is not the Millennium Bridge. It is not a targeted magical attack for spectacle. Rather, it is cumulative dread. As Fudge says, "My dear Prime Minister, you can't honestly think I'm still Minister for Magic after all this. I was sacked 3 days ago. The whole wizarding community has been screaming for my resignation for a fortnight." These lines build the sense of a society on edge, not one reduced to rubble in an instant. The confusion is understandable. The film's use of visual storytelling trades subtlety for clarity. David Yates, the director, wanted to show the Muggle world under siege, to create immediate tension, and what better way than to have a known London landmark fall before the eyes of unsuspecting civilians. But in doing so, the film replaces the slow dread of the book with fast, loud destruction. It exchanges emotional weight for visual impact. This change may be effective cinematically, but it rewrites the tone and intentions of the source material. The Millennium Bridge itself did not exist at the time Rowling wrote the early books. It opened in 2000, the same year Goblet of Fire was published. When Half-Blood Prince came out in 2005, the bridge had already earned a nickname, the Wobbly Bridge, for its early structural issues. Perhaps the film's screenwriters thought destroying it was poetic, a metaphor for instability. Yet that poetic license muddles the historical accuracy of the world Rowling created. In Rowling's vision, the fear of Voldemort's return spreads like rot. It is not always visible. People go missing. Newspapers print ominous headlines. The magical and non-magical worlds begin to overlap in dangerous, chaotic ways, but not always through open attacks. The book does not depict Death Eaters crashing through Muggle streets. It shows them eroding security from within. It shows fear blooming in silence. When readers turn to Half-Blood Prince, they are met with psychological tension, not physical demolition. The book opens not with a visual, but a conversation. The Prime Minister is weary, having dealt with floods, freak storms, and inexplicable disappearances. Fudge arrives, dishevelled and flustered, bringing news of the Wizarding War. A grim mood has gripped the country, the Prime Minister reflects, and it is this mood that pervades the book. Not instant catastrophe, but lingering unease. It is also crucial to understand the narrative strategy of Rowling. Her chaos does not arrive with spectacle, it arrives with whispers. The wizarding world operates in secrecy, and even its most brutal figures know the value of working in the shadows. Voldemort's rise is not marked by explosions, but by quiet terror. His grip tightens in back alleys, behind closed doors, in broken families and traitorous whispers. He does not destroy bridges in daylight, he destroys lives in the dark. The bridge scene in the film misrepresents the way magic interacts with the Muggle world. In Rowling's universe, the statute of secrecy is paramount. Wizards avoid public acts of magic precisely because of the risks. While the law is not always followed during times of war, such a blatant attack would cause an international crisis. The Ministry of Magic would be in shambles, its core principles undermined, but in the film none of this is addressed. The destruction occurs and the implications vanish like smoke. The story continues uninterrupted, as though the Muggle world will simply forget. There is also a tonal shift. The film's opening tells the audience, the war is here, it is violent and it is public. The book takes another route. It builds tension gradually. Characters like Dumbledore and Snape are introduced with careful foreshadowing. Harry's growing maturity, the atmosphere at Hogwarts, the weight of loss, these are central to the book's opening movements. The film bypasses them to generate shock. But that shock undermines the slow burn of dread that defines the sixth installment of the series. Another point often overlooked is how the visual destruction distorts our understanding of the Death Eaters. In the books, they are terrifying not because they are loud, but because they are calculated. Bellatrix Lestrange is manic, yes, but her madness has method. Lucius Malfoy is cold, measured, and manipulative. Fenrir Greyback is a symbol of hidden predation. Their power lies not in brute force, but in strategic violence. Reducing them to bridge-smashing terrorists oversimplifies their menace. Number 15, Gringotts and the hoverboard ride. Of all the moments that were altered in the adaptation of the Harry Potter books into movies, few are as misunderstood as the Gringotts escape in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2. The film transformed what was a desperate, chaotic breakout in the book into a gravity-defying chase sequence, complete with a sleek metallic platform that seemed to function like a magical hoverboard. Many viewers, having only seen the movie or not remembering the book clearly, now associate this glittering platform with J.K. Rowling's original story. But this device, though visually dazzling, is a complete fabrication of the filmmakers, invented for cinematic effect and never once described in the text. In the novel, the escape from Gringotts is raw, tense, and grounded in the brutal logic of magic and desperation. It does not rely on a streamlined visual shortcut. After disguising Hermione as Bellatrix Lestrange, the trio infiltrates the deepest vaults of the Goblin Run Bank to retrieve one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. They are joined by the reluctant Goblin Griphook, who betrays them the moment the treasure is secured. The enchanted gold within the vault, cursed with the Yemino and Flagrante spells, begins multiplying and burning, threatening to bury them alive. Their escape begins not with a daring leap onto a machine, but with a mounting sense of panic and suffocation. In the book, Rowling writes, "The goblin was still crying for help when Hermione pointed her wand at the door and yelled, 'Alohomora!' It didn't open. Instead, a tongue of flame burst out of the keyhole, and the metal door glowed red-hot. The group is trapped inside a hellish chamber, and their only path forward is brute force and ingenuity. Nowhere in this passage, nor in the chapters that follow, is there mention of any kind of flying platform or levitating sled. The magical world Rowling created operates with its own internal laws, wild, yes, but always consistent. As the trio stumbles out of the Lestrange vault, they are met with resistance. The security measures of Gringotts are not conveniently bypassed through a chase sequence. Instead, it is Harry who takes control, drawing on his instincts and courage. They reach the chained, starved Ukrainian iron-belly dragon, a terrifying creature used by the goblins to guard the lower vaults. Harry, in a desperate gambit, uses his power over beasts to command the dragon's cooperation. He speaks in Parseltongue, cuts the creature's bindings, and uses its blind fury as a battering ram. Rowling describes the escape. With a roar, it heaved its front legs and began to scramble up the passageway, smashing the walls and ceiling with its bulk. The trio does not mount a sleek contraption designed to thrill. They cling to the back of a bloodied, half-blind dragon, their bodies scraping against the rough scales, the wind tearing at them as the dragon claws its way upward. This is not a polished escape. It is a desperate surge toward freedom, powered by pain and fury. The film's reimagining strips away the weight of this moment. Instead of riding the dragon through a crumbling cavern, viewers are treated to an elegant chase that turns Gringotts into something more akin to a magical roller coaster. When the trio's minecart crashes from the rails, they land, miraculously, on a hovering platform that glides through the depths like a futuristic board. This scene, with its cinematic tension and fluid motion, is designed to be exciting, not believable. The raw chaos and risk of Rowling's narrative are replaced by smooth choreography. It's not just the absence of the hoverboard that marks the difference, but the tone and pacing. In the novel, the escape is suffused with the urgency of rebellion. The dragon is a prisoner just like them, and its flight to the surface is not guided by any spell or mechanical device. It smashes through Gringotts in blind panic, destroying marble and stone, upending centuries of goblin authority. The trio does not know if they will survive. They simply hold on and hope. They could hear the dragon's great wings battering the air as it fought its way upward, Rowling writes. It was as if they were in the middle of an earthquake. Contrast this with the film, where the action is smoothed out for clarity. The hoverboard platform floats precisely where it needs to be. It carries the trio with no visible enchantment or explanation. Its appearance resembles Muggle science fiction more than the rugged and unpredictable wizarding world that Rowling created. This kind of device has no precedent in the books. There are no flying platforms in Gringotts, no magical hoverboards. The very concept contradicts the established rules of Rowling's magic, which values ritual, danger, and cost. The idea that Gringotts contains a high-speed hover system weakens the mystique of the bank itself. In the books, Gringotts is ancient, labyrinthine, and protected by magic that is both brilliant and brutal. Goblins are possessive and suspicious. They would never trust something as free-floating and insecure as an open hoverboard platform, especially not in the deepest levels of their fortress. Security in Gringotts is not sleek. It is severe, painful, and absolute. It's worth noting that even the mine carts of Gringotts in the book do not function like modern theme park rides. They are fast, yes, and unnerving, but they are also primitive and rough. In The Philosopher's Stone, Rowling writes, "They were speeding downward, deep beneath London, moving so fast that the cold air whipped their faces." The experience is meant to disorient, not entertain. Gringotts is not a place of spectacle, it is a place of terror and awe. Number 16. Hermione's necklace at Slughorn's party. Of all the things the Harry Potter films changed, few are as deceptively remembered as the necklace at Slughorn's Christmas party. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, the movie introduced an elegant, flirtatious version of Hermione Granger that never existed in the book. Audiences watched with awe as she descended the stairs of Slughorn's office, adorned in a delicate silver necklace and a figure-hugging lavender dress. The lighting framed her like a vision. Harry turned, visibly impressed. His admiration lingered just long enough for viewers to wonder if the boy who lived might feel something deeper than friendship. It was a moment heavy with romantic implication, captured with soft smiles and swelling music. And yet this entire vision is cinema's mirage, crafted not from J.K. Rowling's words, but from a screenwriter's flourish. In the book, Hermione's appearance at the party is not described as particularly dazzling. She attends with Cormac McLaggen, not to impress anyone, but to punish Ron. There is no mention of a stunning necklace, no gasps from Harry, and certainly no hint of mutual longing. Instead, Rowling crafts the evening with emotional undercurrents more subtle and more raw. Hermione, usually composed, is brittle with jealousy. Ron's fling with Lavender Brown has wounded her deeply. She clings to Cormac as a pawn, hoping Ron might hurt in return. The Christmas party is not a magical debut, it is a battlefield of silent accusations and forced laughter. In the film, the choice of attire becomes a tool for visual storytelling, but it also distorts Hermione's character. She is given a look that implies intentional seduction. The necklace, hanging delicately from her neck, becomes a symbol of elegance, of a young woman growing into her own beauty. But in the book, Hermione has no such agenda. Her hurt is real, not styled. She's not there to catch Harry's eye. She's there to mask pain, and poorly at that. When she disappears behind a tapestry to cry, it isn't because Harry didn't notice her, it's because Ron didn't care that she came with someone else. Rowling wrote the scene with more emotional honesty. Hermione turned away looking mortified, the book notes, after a confrontation with McLaggen. She had made her point, but she didn't seem to have enjoyed it. This is not the voice of a girl basking in new attention. It's the voice of someone who knows she's degraded herself in an attempt to strike back. The film replaces that emotional struggle with aesthetic impact. A beautiful necklace, a dramatic turn, a lingering stare. But such things are not part of the original canon. Harry's response in the book is also worlds apart from the film's implication. There is no admiring gaze, no quiet admiration of Hermione's appearance. In fact, Harry is too caught up in his own discomfort. Slughorn's party for him is a chore, and the only girl he notices that evening is Ginny, whose laughter with Dean fuels Harry's own simmering jealousy. His internal monologue is preoccupied with Romilda Vane's relentless interest and his irritation over being forced to socialize. Hermione's emotional state is acknowledged, but not her looks. She isn't framed as radiant or striking. She is fragile and raw, barely able to hold her smile. The film's need to dramatize subtle interactions led to the creation of false memories among many fans. They remember the necklace, they remember the dress, they remember the moment that never existed. Fan art, discussions and rewatches have turned it into a pseudo-canonical event, as though Hermione's transformation into a young woman of beauty and charm was always part of the tale. But Rowling never described her that way in this moment. She saved Hermione's coming into her own for other places, other times, most notably the Yule Ball in Goblet of Fire, where the transformation was both earned and meaningful. That evening in the book was marked more by what wasn't said than what was shown. Hermione's heartbreak wasn't glamorous. It was desperate. She tried to smile, tried to laugh at Slughorn's jokes, tried to act like she didn't care. She even dragged Harry into a corner to whisper about Malfoy's suspicious absences, clinging to some sense of normalcy. But it was always there, behind her eyes, the betrayal, the humiliation. And it never needed a necklace to shine. Cormac McLaggen, her date, was a disaster. His arrogance in his crudeness, his complete lack of tact, served as a painful reminder that Hermione had chosen him in haste, not sincerity. She ducked his company behind tapestries and tried to distance herself whenever possible. "He keeps trying to kiss me," she hissed to Harry, eyes flashing with fury. It was clear this was not a girl looking for male attention. This was a girl desperate to escape the wreckage of her own emotional miscalculation. The necklace in the film is more than just an accessory. It's a symbol of how cinema can rewrite character arcs. By giving Hermione a moment of visual triumph, the movie alters the emotional temperature of the scene. Instead of a girl nursing a bruised heart, we are shown a young woman turning heads. Instead of the pain of rejection, we see the allure of attention. The inner becomes the outer, the wound becomes the wardrobe, and in doing so, the complexity is lost. In the book, Slughorn's party functions as a tension point, not a celebration. It exposes cracks between Ron and Hermione, between Harry and the rest of the guests, even between Slughorn's polished persona and his darker motives. The setting is rich with intrigue, conversations about house elf rights, eavesdropping on Malfoy, subtle hints of Slughorn's obsession with status. These are not the ingredients of romantic drama, they are the fabric of a narrative that prioritizes emotional honesty over spectacle. Number 17, the final duel with Voldemort. The battle raged like a storm, spells clashing and bodies falling, but in the heart of the chaos, Harry Potter stood face to face with the man who had haunted his life. In the film Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, this final confrontation was transformed into a visual spectacle, a duel drenched in dramatic flair. Voldemort and Harry fought alone, isolated from the rest of the world, high above the ruins of Hogwarts, flying, grappling, twisting through the shattered air like mythical titans. They crashed through windows, tumbled through the sky, wands locked in radiant arcs of green and red, until finally they landed in the courtyard, where Voldemort disintegrated into ashen fragments, blown away like dust. It was stunning, it was theatrical, but it wasn't the truth. The truth lies in the quiet gravity of Rowling's original words, where the final clash was not a private battle but a public reckoning. It did not happen in isolation. It was not a dance of CGI brilliance, but a confrontation in the Great Hall itself, in front of the eyes that had watched the war unfold. There were no falling towers, no collapsing staircases, no glorious demise. Voldemort's death in the book was stark, unembellished, and brutal in its ordinariness. He did not explode, he did not vanish, he simply fell. It matters because the film robs the moment of its intended weight. J.K. Rowling crafted Voldemort's demise not as an act of revenge or violent triumph, but as a moral statement. Evil, no matter how grand or terrifying, dies like everything else. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality, she wrote. That sentence, simple and absolute, carried the force of a decade's worth of fear, collapsing into nothing. In the book, the Dark Lord was not felled by Harry's power, but by his own folly, his own wand turning against him, his own arrogance blinding him to the truth. There was no glowing duel between equals. Harry never overpowered Voldemort with force. He stood before him surrounded by survivors and told him the truth. He spoke of the Elder Wand's true allegiance, of Snape's sacrifice, of Dumbledore's plan. He stripped Voldemort down with words, not spells. "Try for some remorse, Tom," Harry said. "Be a man. Try for some remorse." That offer, quiet and sincere, was Harry's final act of defiance. In the movie, it is omitted. In the book, it is pivotal. It revealed Harry's strength not in magic, but in mercy. There was no fight. There was a spell, one Avada Kedavra against one Expelliarmus. Green met red, and the Elder Wand flew into Harry's hand. Tom Riddle collapsed, his death unremarkable. He did not vanish because evil does not vanish. It must be seen, witnessed, understood. It must leave behind a body, a shell, a warning. That is why Rowling described the body. And Voldemort was dead, killed by his own rebounding curse, and Harry stood with 2 wands in his hand. 2 wands and the eyes of everyone on him. The film turned Voldemort's death into a spectacle. The book made it an exposure. In the film it is hard to tell what killed him, the wand, Harry's power, a vague explosion. But in the book it is devastatingly clear. Voldemort was killed by his own spell, rebounding from the Elder Wand that never truly belonged to him. That distinction matters. It was not Harry's force that won the day, it was his understanding. He disarmed Draco, who had earlier disarmed Dumbledore. That act, small and almost accidental, turned the fate of the Elder Wand. The power Voldemort chased never served him. He never understood the wand because he never understood loyalty or sacrifice. The Great Hall, not the courtyard, was the stage. In the book, the room held the wounded and the dead, the broken and the brave. It held the people Voldemort had tried to silence. When he fell, they saw it, they knew it. His death was not private, but communal. A victory, not just for Harry, but for all who had suffered. The hall echoed not with cinematic silence, but with the sound of breath returning to tired lungs, of disbelief turning into hope. Voldemort's body remained on the floor. This detail, often forgotten, was not incidental. It was symbolic. The tyrant who once feared death above all, who tore his soul to shreds to avoid it, now lay cold and still. Rowling wrote, Tom Riddle was just a man who died. This sentence collapses the myth of Voldemort. The movie preserves the myth, the book shatters it. It is a difference of philosophy. One chooses drama, the other truth. The readers needed to see the body because Voldemort represented more than a villain. He was fear incarnate. And when fear dies, it must be seen. Rowling understood this. Harry did not revel in the death. He did not shout. He did not cry. He simply stood. That quiet stillness speaks louder than any cinematic explosion. It is a declaration that evil is not always slain by sword or fire, but by truth and clarity. The moment was not one of vengeance. Harry did not kill out of hate. He defended life, protected others, and offered his enemy a chance to feel remorse. That is heroism. That is the core of the story. The film, by ignoring this, creates a different Harry, one who fights like his enemy, one who wins through power. But Harry's greatest power was never magic. It was love, compassion, wisdom. That was Dumbledore's lesson. That was Snape's secret. That was Lily's gift. In the film, the last battle is stylized chaos. In the book, it is calm. A duel, yes, but one grounded in understanding and fatal truth. That wand's power is mine, Voldemort cried moments before his death. But he was wrong. He had always been wrong. Power was never ownership. The wand served allegiance, not conquest. In misunderstanding this, he doomed himself. No music played when Voldemort died in the book. No wind carried him away. There was silence. There was finality. He died a man, not a monster. That is what made it haunting. He did not get the villain's glorious exit. He did not become legend. He became a cautionary tale. That was Rowling's intention, to remind us that even the darkest tyrant is mortal. The cinematic choice to have Voldemort dissolve into dust was visually compelling but thematically hollow. It erased the discomfort of his body lying there, erased the fact that the greatest evil of their age was, in the end, nothing more than flesh and bone. Rowling forced us to look, to see the price of his choices, to see what remained. In doing so, she grounded the fantastical in reality. The characters in the Great Hall did not cheer, they did not dance. They gathered, they processed, they mourned. Death had touched all of them. Even in victory, there was grief. The movie glossed over this, jumping to quiet scenes of recovery. But in the book, the war's end was slow, reflective, honest. The scar had not pained Harry for 19 years. All was well. That was the final note. Not triumph, but peace. The film rewrote the ending to fit a blockbuster mold. The book offered something deeper, something harder to digest. It refused to glorify violence, refused to deify Harry, refused to grant Voldemort the grand finale. The last act of the book is not battle, but choice. Harry chooses not to keep the Elder Wand. He chooses not to pursue power. He snaps it in half and throws it away. That gesture, more than any duel, is the end of the war. In the aftermath, Harry does not stand above others. He does not become a warrior king. He returns to the survivors, to Ginny, to Ron and Hermione. The narrative settles into quiet. It breathes. The film, in contrast, ends with spectacle and silence. It forgets the weight of the past, the consequences. The book does not. Rowling made a point. Voldemort's terror came from his refusal to accept death. His obsession with immortality made him inhuman. But, in the end, death came, and it was ordinary. That was the punishment. That was the justice. Not fire and glory, but a mundane end. Just a body on the floor, just a man, lifeless and alone. And that's the power of the book. It reminds us that no matter how high evil climbs, it falls. And when it falls, it is not grand, it is tragic, small and silent. Harry's victory was not over magic. It was over fear, over despair, over hatred. It was a moral victory, not a martial one. And that is why the final scene of the book still lingers quietly in the hearts of readers who remember what really happened in the Great Hall of Hogwarts. Number 18. Stormy Weather at Platform 934. On a quiet, overcast morning, the silver light of a sombre sky stretches over King's Cross Station as a boy with untidy black hair and second-hand clothes pulls a heavy trolley across the wet pavement. The platform is nearly empty save for the bustling red-haired family chatting near the barrier. The boy pauses, hesitating, his breath visible in the chill air, as he watches them vanish one by one through a wall of bricks. That's the image burned into the memory of millions. But it isn't J.K. Rowling's scene, it's a piece of cinema magic, cinematic fiction mistaken by many as canon, woven seamlessly into the minds of viewers. The fog, the stormy air, the heavy sense of loneliness, none of it belongs to the original book. And yet, like the scar on Harry's forehead, it's become iconic. This moment in the film Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone reimagines a warm, crowded September morning into something solemn and dramatic, altering the emotional blueprint laid out in the pages of the novel. In the book, the weather is strikingly ordinary. It's not raining, there's no hint of melancholy in the sky, and there's no gloom trailing Harry's footsteps as he pushes his trolley through King's Cross. The station is bustling with crowds, the sounds of families and suitcases, of goodbyes and instructions. It's loud, full of energy and life. Rowling writes, King's Cross Station was very busy indeed. Harry's Uncle Vernon had taken him there that morning, and the station was full of families saying goodbye to their children. This single sentence immediately paints a very different picture, one where Harry isn't isolated in an echo chamber of mist and drizzle, but rather surrounded by the noisy chaos of ordinary life. He is not yet a sad figure left out in the cold. He is a curious boy in a sea of movement, anticipating the moment his real life will begin. The change in atmosphere between book and film is subtle but powerful. In the movie, the choice of weather is deliberate. A grey palette dominates the frame, emphasizing Harry's solitude. He stands out not because of his awe or excitement, but because of how lost and insignificant he appears. It's a visual metaphor, an emotional shortcut to show the audience how alone he feels. But in the book, Rowling doesn't rely on bleak weather to show Harry's emotional state. She doesn't need to. His inner thoughts carry the narrative. He's nervous, certainly, but there's excitement in him too. The sky doesn't weep for Harry, because Rowling doesn't position him as a tragic figure in that moment. Instead, she gives us a boy on the cusp of adventure, surrounded by the vibrant world he's about to enter. There's also a crucial difference in how Harry discovers Platform 9, 3, 4. In the movie, he lingers behind the Weasleys, unsure, following them silently as if afraid to interrupt. The camera positions him as an outsider, peeking into a world that's not his. Mrs. Weasley is kind, yes, but their interaction is quick and soft-spoken, shrouded in the quiet fog. In contrast, the book gives us a bolder Harry. He walks up to the twins directly and asks, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to—" He's not skulking in the background, he's participating. And Molly Weasley's response is warm and instructive. She explains the process of walking through the barrier not as a mystery, but as a tradition. There's no tension, no fear of being left behind. The magic is casual, domestic even, and that's what makes it wonderful. The scene in the book is filled with human warmth and humour. Fred teases George, Percy acts important, and Molly chides her sons with affectionate exasperation. Harry, watching this family, doesn't feel alienated by their unity. Instead, he is drawn to it. Rowling gives him an early glimpse of the family he never had, but also never positions him as too far from it. The Weasleys don't hesitate to fold Harry into their bubble. Molly's tone is firm, almost bossy when she realizes who he is, but never cold. There's no dramatic pause, no thunderclap as she says his name. Just a gentle, believable surprise. Are you really? That's all. The world doesn't tilt on its axis. It welcomes him, simply. In the film, the dramatic reinterpretation heightens the emotional impact. It places Harry in a darker, more isolated space, enhancing the viewer's empathy. We want to reach out and guide him ourselves, but this emotional manipulation, however effective on screen, is an invention. It subtly rewrites the character of Harry. On screen, he is passive and timid. In the book, he is uncertain but brave. The platform scene is not just a gateway to Hogwarts, it's a gateway to understanding who Harry is. The film gives us a boy carried by the wind. The book gives us a boy who walks into the storm. Rowling's version emphasizes Harry's resilience. He doesn't arrive at the station with rain dripping from his hair. He doesn't huddle in shadows. He observes, he listens, and he acts. He is more than the circumstances of his life. That's an essential piece of his character. When filmmakers introduce the stormy visuals, they suggest that the world defines Harry's mood, when in fact it's Harry who reacts to the world with stubborn optimism and curiosity. The book never reduces him to a victim of the weather. It's also worth noting that the busy station crowd in the book serves a narrative purpose. The noise, the confusion, it all amplifies Harry's sense of being in an unfamiliar world. Yet he does not shrink from it. Instead, he navigates it piece by piece. When he hears the word muggle from Mrs. Weasley, he follows the sound. He doesn't retreat or wait to be discovered. His proactive nature is clear. Rowling writes, "He stopped dead. A group of people standing close by had just said the word muggle. That's not the action of a boy lost in fog. That's the instinct of someone who's beginning to trust his place in a new world." The magical realism in Rowling's storytelling is always grounded. The extraordinary hides within the ordinary. A barrier between platforms in a real-world train station becomes a passage into another reality. But the wonder comes not from dramatic lighting or special effects. It comes from the quiet confidence that magic exists within reach. That tone is critical. It teaches readers to look for magic in everyday places. When the movie overlays this with thunderclouds and visual gloom, it signals that magic is rare, strange, and separate. That's a fundamentally different message. The platform scene in the film positions Harry as someone at the mercy of the magical world. In the book, he is invited into it. This difference is subtle but profound. Harry's journey isn't about being swept away by magic, it's about claiming it. The book shows us this moment not as a cinematic climax, but as a calm step forward. The excitement builds not through tension, but through humor, charm, and character interaction. These are tools Rowling uses masterfully. The movie swaps them for mood lighting. The lighting in the movie is cold and bluish. It removes warmth from the air, casting everyone in soft grey. But in the book there's heat, there's bustle, there's even laughter. The twins' banter and Molly's exasperation with Percy create a scene that's relatable and human. These are not otherworldly figures moving through fog. They're a family late for the train just like any other. And Harry is swept into that moment not as a ghost, but as a participant. The magic is all the more real because of its normalcy. This is part of Rowling's genius. She makes magic feel lived in. Platform 934 isn't a temple or a gate to another dimension, it's part of a train station. The wizards pushing trolleys are not cloaked in mystery, they're arguing about homework. That's the world Harry is entering, a world of magic that's personal, chaotic, and warm. The film's fog doesn't show us that, it replaces the noise of life with silence. It swaps colour for shadow, it makes magic feel remote, not routine. Some might argue that this change helps reinforce Harry's feelings of isolation, but the book doesn't need to amplify that. It already tells us how unwanted he feels with the Dursleys. Rowling chooses this moment not to emphasize what Harry lacks, but to show what he's gaining. The Weasleys don't just show him how to get to Hogwarts, they show him what it feels like to belong. That is what makes the moment so powerful, the warmth, not the cold. Even the way Harry approaches the barrier is different. In the film, he lingers, hesitates, and seems almost frightened. The music swells ominously. In the book, there is confusion, yes, but also excitement. Harry watches Fred and George disappear, then gets ready. Rowling writes, "He walked more quickly. He was going to crash into the barrier and break his nose. It was going to happen. He was quite sure. And then he closed his eyes, ready for the crash. It didn't come. He kept on running. He opened his eyes." This internal monologue is filled with motion, anticipation, and humor. There's fear, but it's cartoonish, childlike. There's no dramatic pause, no bleak silence. This contrast matters because it informs how readers perceive Harry. A boy who closes his eyes and runs toward a brick wall because he believes in what he was told is not fragile. He's hopeful. The foggy station of the film replaces that boldness with hesitation. It paints Harry as someone still unsure of magic, instead of someone who, even in fear, chooses to believe. Even the moment he steps through the barrier is different. In the movie, the other side is misty and dim. In the book, it's bright and loud. The Scarlet steam engine glows, owls hoot, children shout. It's overwhelming in the best way. Rowling writes, "A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to a platform packed with people." There is no quiet arrival. Harry is swept into the world immediately as are we. There's no transition from darkness to magic. It's all alive at once. The Platform 934 scene is a testament to how atmosphere shapes perception. The film's fictional thundercloud rewrites Harry's story in subtle visual ways. It changes a scene of human connection into one of solemn transformation. While it works as a cinematic device, it leaves behind the joyful clutter and warmth that Rowling so carefully constructed. Readers who return to the book often find themselves surprised by the difference. Surprised that what they remember so vividly was never on the page. Number 19, the real King's Cross conversation. In the hazy, dreamlike brightness of King's Cross Station, Harry Potter stood barefoot on the white, misty floor, his skin unblemished, pain gone, soul intact. The scene in the film Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 played out with tranquil beauty. A polished white nothingness surrounded him. Dumbledore appeared, calm and luminous, speaking in riddles and reassurance. The audience was left with the poetic comfort of a place between life and death, where all seemed forgiven, and nothing required full explanation. But for readers of J.K. Rowling's original novel, that cinematic moment felt hollow, a ghost of a deeper truth. What the movie gave as symbolic minimalism, the book provided as emotional reckoning. In the book, the chapter titled King's Cross is one of the most emotionally profound in the entire series, not because of its surreal setting, but because for the first time, Albus Dumbledore is not a mentor with quiet certainty, but a man bleeding from the wounds of his past. The Dumbledore Harry meets, there is not the guiding hand he once knew at Hogwarts, but a weary soul still searching for peace. This was not just a transition scene, it was a confessional. And it was here that Rowling chose to reveal the human flaws of a wizard who had always towered above the rest. Dumbledore in the film speaks in half-philosophical murmurs. He tells Harry that he is not really dead, that he can choose to go back, and that Voldemort has taken something from Harry, but not everything. It's elegant, it's gentle. But it is a betrayal of the storm that raged within the pages. In the book, Dumbledore does not only tell Harry he has a choice, he shows him the cracked glass of his own soul, one shattered by ambition, guilt, and loss. It is a powerful moment not of comfort, but of understanding, and of earned redemption. In that white place beyond the veil, Dumbledore speaks not as a teacher, but as a brother who once made catastrophic choices. I was such a fool, Harry. After all those years, I had learned nothing. I was fit to be cast out of society, to live in a prison of my own making, he says in the novel. This is not the serene figure from the movie. This is a man haunted by the choices that killed his sister, Ariana, choices rooted in his lust for power and his youthful alliance with Gellert Grindelwald. The film never mentions this. It never names Ariana. It never touches the tragedy that defined Dumbledore's adult life. The memory of Ariana is pivotal in the book. Her death was the turning point for Dumbledore, the shattering of the illusion that he could wield power without consequence. In the King's Cross chapter, he confesses to Harry that during his youth he dreamt of reshaping the world with Grindelwald, seeking the greater good while ignoring the personal cost. I wanted to escape. I wanted to shine. I wanted glory, Dumbledore says, his voice cracking under the weight of regret. This is not the vague, ethereal wisdom of the film's ghostly mentor. This is a man revealing the selfishness at the heart of his past. Rowling crafted this conversation to show the full complexity of Dumbledore's character. He was never a flawless guide. He was a man who learned from pain and who chose to guide others so they would not make his mistakes. His decision to keep Harry in the dark about being a Horcrux, for example, is explored in the book with far more emotional tension than the film allows. Dumbledore admits he was tempted to keep Harry alive as long as possible, not just to defeat Voldemort, but to delay the loss of a boy he had come to love like a son. This moral ambiguity is vital. It shows that even in the final battle between good and evil, choices are never simple. The film skips over this. It gives Dumbledore a serene clarity, as if he had known all along what would happen and had planned it with perfect wisdom. But that robs the audience of the truth, that Dumbledore doubted himself, that he made terrible decisions and bore the burden alone, that he cried over Ariana, that he feared death, that he used Harry. I cared more for your happiness than for knowing the truth, he confesses in the book, more for your peace than for my plan. These lines reveal the emotional cost of leadership. They show that love, even when well-intentioned, can cause harm. The station itself is not just symbolic. It is a mirror of Harry's journey. He arrives there broken but whole, wounded but alive. He meets not a deity, but a man who once chased glory and paid the price. Their exchange is slow, heavy, personal. Dumbledore tells him of the hallowed duality and admits he once lusted for them. He tells him that power had almost destroyed him. He admits he was once no better than Tom Riddle. Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living and, above all, those who live without love, he says. But that line comes after pages of reflection, not as a standalone quote. In the film, it feels like an epigram. In the book, it feels like the thesis of a long, painful education. Even the symbolic fetus-like form lying under the bench, the mangled piece of Voldemort's soul, is treated differently. In the film, it's a visual horror. In the book, it is agony. Harry sees it and recoils. Dumbledore cannot help it. "It cannot be helped," he says with sorrow. The image is not just grotesque. It is a warning, a soul broken by choices too late to heal. That's the danger Voldemort never understood. The loss of humanity begins with the smallest choices, the ones Dumbledore once also made. Harry's understanding of death, sacrifice and love is born in that white limbo, not from reassurances but from revelations. He sees that even the greatest wizard can fall. He sees that heroism is not about being flawless, it's about facing truth. The cinematic Dumbledore says, "Words are, in my not-so-humble opinion, our most inexhaustible source of magic." It's a beautiful line, but it floats above the surface. The book's Dumbledore digs beneath the skin, revealing scars and bleeding truths. What the film missed most of all was the message of responsibility. In the novel, Dumbledore makes it clear he is not a puppet master. He is a man who tried to steer events with a shaky hand, praying that love would guide the rest. He never claims to have all the answers. That is what makes his final gift to Harry so powerful. Honesty. When Harry asks whether this place is real or just in his mind, Dumbledore says, "Of course it is happening inside your head, Harry, but why on earth should that mean that it is not real?" In the film, this line is given with quiet grace, but in the book, it comes after pages of spiritual bloodletting. Harry leaves King's Cross not with a mystical blessing, but with the knowledge that power corrupts, that love is painful, and that life demands choices. He does not come back because Dumbledore tells him to. He returns because he understands that courage means going on, even when you're broken. That understanding is built through the long, thorny dialogue with Dumbledore in the book. The film skips that journey. It gives the destination, not the path. And in doing so, it diminishes the emotional climax of 7 books. Dumbledore's sins, his failures, his dreams and fears all fade into poetic fog. Viewers leave with the impression that he was always right, always calm, always wise, but readers know better. Readers know he was a man who stood in front of a child and confessed that he had failed him. That is what makes the scene unforgettable. There is also the loss of legacy. Dumbledore's final scene in the book reshapes our understanding of the entire series. Every choice he made, from hiding truths to assigning Snape to protect Harry, is shown through the lens of regret. The film robs us of that lens. It offers purity where the book offered repentance. It gives us a saint, not a sinner who found redemption. This matters because Harry's triumph is not only physical, it is moral. He becomes the man Dumbledore could never be, not by avoiding mistakes, but by learning from them. He chooses to spare Draco. He walks into the forest. He rejects the Elder Wand. And he does it not because of a flawless mentor, but because of one who dared to tell the truth at the end. In that whiteness, between life and death, between the past and the future, stood a boy and an old man, but only one of them was at peace. Dumbledore's peace was not in the white glow. It was in the act of finally being honest. The film, for all its beauty, never gave us that gift. It gave us the light, but not the fire that forged it. It gave us the destination, but not the path walked in pain. And that is why so many who only saw the movie believe Dumbledore was always perfect. They think he was a guiding light untouched by darkness. But the book tells a harder truth. He was a man made wise by sorrow, made kind by guilt, made brave by love. His conversation with Harry is not a final lesson. It is a confession, one that makes the boy into a man and the man into a memory. Number 20, Neville kills Nagini in front of Voldemort. Neville Longbottom stood in the Great Hall, gripping the sword of Gryffindor in his trembling hands. His face, smudged with ash and blood, was set in grim determination. Around him, chaos surged, spells crackled through the smoky air, screams echoed off the stone walls, and shadows danced where giants and centaurs clashed. But one moment, played with cinematic glory in the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, remains deeply etched in the minds of viewers. The moment Neville, with the courage of a lion, beheaded Nagini before the horrified eyes of Lord Voldemort. This act was shown as the triumphant crescendo of Neville's arc, a shining beacon of unexpected bravery. Yet, as powerful as the image is, it's not what truly happened in J.K. Rowling's book. The truth is quieter, subtler, and far more nuanced. In the film, the death of Nagini is depicted as a dramatic strike in the heart of the battle. Voldemort stands just steps away, his expression twisting in disbelief as Neville severs the serpent's head. It's choreographed like a cinematic climax, deliberately placing Voldemort and his final Horcrux in the same visual frame, as if one act simultaneously destroys both. The audience sees the monster slain and the Dark Lord recoil, as if some invisible thread has snapped within him. But this visual choice, though compelling, changes the fundamental mechanics of the story. It warps the carefully constructed sequence Rowling laid out in the book, where every Horcrux had to be destroyed before Voldemort himself could finally be killed. In the actual text, the destruction of Nagini comes after Voldemort's death, not before. Rowling made it clear that Voldemort, in his arrogance and ignorance, never realized how close he was to complete vulnerability. He believed the Elder Wand's allegiance would protect him, even against the power of Harry Potter. The readers, on the other hand, knew the truth. The last Horcrux, Nagini, was still alive, and until she was dead, Voldemort's soul remained fractured and tethered to the world. This is a critical detail that the film overlooks in its pursuit of visual drama. The book provides a carefully orchestrated sequence, a delicate balance of timing and fate. Voldemort dies because the Elder Wand will not kill its true master. Harry, having sacrificed himself, returned protected by that ancient magic. Voldemort's own curse rebounded upon him, sealing his fate not because of Neville's action, but because of his own ignorance. Neville's heroism was pivotal, but not in the way the film presented. His act came after Harry's triumph, a final necessary gesture, but not the spark that ignited Voldemort's downfall. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Rowling writes, "With a single stroke, Neville sliced off the great snake's head. It spun high in the air, glistening as it moved, and the body thudded to the ground at Voldemort's feet." This moment does occur. Neville does slay Nagini, but the timing is crucial. By then, Voldemort is already dead. The last piece of his soul, housed within the snake, is severed after the man who once bore the name Tom Riddle has already crumpled to the ground, lifeless and empty. There's a symbolic weight in this order. The soul dies last, cut loose when the man is already gone, a ghost of the evil he once wielded. The film, however, sought symmetry over subtlety. It placed Neville's strike at the emotional peak, an act of defiance against the Dark Lord still standing. It is no surprise that viewers remember it so vividly. It was built to be remembered. The swelling music, the slow motion, the tension in Voldemort's eyes. It creates the illusion that Neville's blow is the moment everything changes. And in that moment, it truly feels as if Neville delivers the final strike, the one that topples the greatest evil of their time. But this is not canon, it is cinema. This artistic liberty, while visually powerful, alters the internal logic of the series. The Horcruxes were the backbone of Voldemort's immortality. Each had to be destroyed before he could truly die. In the book, the sequence is meticulous. The diary, the ring, the locket, the cup, the diadem, and Harry himself, all destroyed one by one, each piece bringing Voldemort closer to mortality. Nagini, the final anchor, remains until after the decisive duel. Changing this sequence, as the film does, implies that Voldemort dies while part of his soul still lives, a contradiction to one of the core principles established throughout the series. Furthermore, Rowling's version preserves the theme of Voldemort's unawareness. He never knew the boy he tried to kill had become a Horcrux. He never realized that his snake, his most trusted companion, was being hunted not out of vengeance, but necessity. This ignorance is his undoing. The film, by contrast, shows Voldemort watching his last Horcrux perish, supposedly still standing strong, which removes this key irony. It makes him more reactive, more aware, and thus less tragically blind. Neville's growth arc is no less impressive in the book. He pulls the Sword of Gryffindor from the sorting hat in a moment, echoing Harry's own act in the Chamber of Secrets. The sword presents itself only to true Gryffindors, and Neville, long underestimated, proves his worth in the most defining way, but his action is not performed in front of Voldemort to challenge him directly. Rather, it's part of the larger battle, a piece in the grand finale. He does not seek the spotlight. His courage is quiet, instinctive, born not from glory, but from necessity. In fact, Rowling's narrative emphasizes that many acts of heroism happen away from the grand stage. While Harry, Voldemort, and their destinies collide, others, Neville among them, fight their own battles in the shadows. The final strike against Nagini is one such act. It is not the blaze of cinematic heroism, but a finishing blow in a much deeper war. It's an act of trust as Harry counts on his friends to do what must be done, even if he cannot. The emotional resonance of Neville's strike in the film is undeniable. Audiences cheer. It is the moment the underdog roars. But in the book, the emotional power lies in the quiet truth that Neville acts not for attention or validation, but because it is right. He is the embodiment of Dumbledore's lesson that it takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. In slaying Nagini, Neville fulfills this idea completely. He stands up to darkness itself with no promise of glory. Another layer lost in the film is the fragile suspense of Nagini's survival. In the book, after Harry returns from the forest, Voldemort keeps Nagini close, shielded in a magical barrier. She coils near him, protected, yet visibly the key to his downfall. The suspense builds as the characters understand the stakes. As long as she lives, Voldemort cannot die. The duel is not merely about Harry and Voldemort, it's a race to destroy Nagini. The film collapses this tension by resolving it too early, severing her head before the final clash even ends. Rowling's structure creates a ticking clock. The reader knows that unless Nagini is killed, Voldemort will return again, perhaps weaker but still alive. There's a desperate weight to each moment she remains intact. The barrier spells, the chaos of the battle, the smoke and confusion, all serve to delay that final strike. When Neville finally delivers it, it's not a surprise twist, but a release of tension that has stretched for chapters. The snake's death is not a shock, it is a relief. This rearrangement also affects Harry's role. In the film, the destruction of the last Horcrux appears to empower Harry in the duel, as if it tips the balance. But in the book, Harry defeats Voldemort not because of Nagini's death, but because of his deeper understanding of loyalty, love, and the Elder Wand's allegiance. The moral core of the series is that victory comes from compassion, not violence. Neville's blow complements this theme, but does not define it. The significance of this discrepancy is more than academic. It reveals how adaptations can shift narrative meaning. The film's choice, though arguably more thrilling, places power in the sword, in the spectacle. The book keeps the power in understanding, in sacrifice, and in quiet strength. The death of a Horcrux is not just a battle moment, it is a metaphysical unraveling, a soul breaking apart. Slaying a snake is not the same as unraveling evil. It is worth noting that Nagini in both versions is more than just a snake. She is Voldemort's companion, his confidant, and ultimately the vessel of his soul. Her destruction is symbolic. The end of intimacy, the severing of Voldemort's last connection to the living world. In the book, this comes after his own demise, making it feel more like the final echo of a fallen tyrant. In the film, it becomes a final slap to his face, a challenge, a humiliation. Both are powerful, but one is faithful to the message, the other is tailored for cheers. The reverence with which readers remember Neville's moment should not be lost, even as we clarify the facts. His bravery remains unquestioned, but understanding the true sequence recenters the narrative where Rowling placed it, in the hands of many, in quiet courage, and in unseen acts. The film casts him as a sudden hero. The book shows he was one all along. When readers discuss canon, they must remember that adaptation is not truth, it is interpretation. The scene of Neville killing Nagini in front of Voldemort may live on in memory, but it was never the reality of the story. It was a choice made for screen, not for the page. And though it captured the drama, it lost the essence. The real strength of that moment lies not in spectacle, but in structure, and that structure belongs to the book. Number 21. Slytherins sent to the dungeons. In the chaos of the final battle at Hogwarts, the film adaptation of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2 introduces a moment that lingers in the minds of many fans. Professor McGonagall, with steel in her voice, orders all Slytherin students to be taken to the dungeons. The implication is unmistakable. They are untrustworthy, cowards, perhaps even traitors. As the camera pans across the somber faces of the Slytherins, it delivers an unspoken accusation. These are not fighters, they are threats. That single moment etched itself into the popular consciousness, distorting the image of Slytherin House for generations of moviegoers. It gave rise to a powerful but false narrative, one not rooted in the original text, but born from cinematic oversimplification. The scene did not exist in the book, not in spirit, not in word, not even in implication. J.K. Rowling, ever precise in her moral architecture, constructed Slytherin not as a nest of villains, but as a complex house filled with ambition, cunning, and resourcefulness. In her pages, cowardice and courage are not tied to house colours. They are human traits, scattered unevenly among Gryffindors, Hufflepuffs, Ravenclaws, and yes, Slytherins. By transforming an evacuation into an expulsion, the film flattened that moral complexity, sacrificing nuance for narrative clarity. The true moment in the book unfolds with a sense of anxious democracy. Professor McGonagall stands before the assembled students in the Great Hall and offers them a choice. All underage students may be evacuated, and those who are of age may stay and fight, but only if they choose to. All students are to be evacuated. Those over age may stay if they wish. There is no demand, no decree. Only the quiet weight of a decision to be made. The Slytherins, like their peers, are offered the same chance. And yes, many choose to leave, but the book is clear, not all. When Pansy Parkinson stands and shrieks, "But he's there! Potter's there! Someone grab him!" she is not greeted with agreement. She is met with silent disapproval from every other house. But the text never claims that her sentiment echoes the entire Slytherin table. It is her voice alone that cries for betrayal. The other students do not join her. They do not rise with wands aimed at Harry. They remain still. And after this, the sorting begins. Those who wish to stay, those who wish to go. It is McGonagall's offer, not an indictment. In Deathly Hallows, Chapter 31, Rowling writes, McGonagall had gone to oversee the evacuation of the younger students. The Great Hall was emptying rapidly. Students were running past Harry, some with looks of terror on their faces, others exultant, as though this was the most exciting moment of their lives. Nowhere in this scene is Slytherin singled out. Nowhere is there a mention of them being marched like prisoners to the dungeons. This cinematic choice did not emerge from Rowling's pen, but from a scriptwriter's need for visual shorthand. Among those who stayed, even fought, were students whose names are often forgotten. Slughorn, the Slytherin head of house, returns with reinforcements. A number of Hogwarts students, some of whom Harry recognized from Slytherin. These are not nameless cowards hiding underground, they are allies. They returned with their professor, not under duress, not under arrest. They came to defend their school. It is a fleeting but powerful acknowledgement. Rowling didn't ignore Slytherin's flaws, but neither did she condemn them wholesale. Even Blaise Zabini, often associated with aloof arrogance, is never portrayed as a villain. And though Draco Malfoy does flee the battle, his story is shaded with survival instinct, familial fear, and conflicting loyalties, not simplistic betrayal. His is a tale of entrapment, not villainy. By contrast, Crabbe dies in the very room of requirement, unleashing the fiend fire that nearly consumes them all, a reckless act of violence that harms no one more than himself. These are not clean-cut villains, they are confused young men in the fog of war. The film's version erases the bravery of Slytherins like Slughorn, who fights alongside McGonagall and Kingsley Shacklebolt against Voldemort himself. This is no small gesture. Slughorn, an aging professor with a history of self-preservation, faces the Dark Lord directly. In doing so, he represents the better angels of Slytherin, the willingness to stand for good when it truly matters. He is fighting with all his might, the text suggests. There is no ambiguity in his loyalty in that final hour. To imprison every Slytherin in the dungeon, as the film does, is to imply guilt by association. It suggests that one's house defines one's soul, a notion the books repeatedly reject. When the Sorting Hat sings, "Yet how to pick the worthy ones," when all are brave at heart, it underscores a deeper truth. Bravery wears many faces. Ambition and courage are not enemies, they are companions when channeled wisely. To be cunning is not to be cruel, to be calculating is not to be a coward. The books are clear that Hogwarts itself needed unity, not further division. In Goblet of Fire, Dumbledore reminds the school, "We are only as strong as we are united, as weak as we are divided." The film's choice to isolate and vilify Slytherin fractures that unity. It sends a message that some students are inherently less trustworthy, that some loyalties can be predetermined by colour and creed. But Rowling's vision resists that simplicity. She understands that heroes can wear green and silver as surely as scarlet and gold. Even in earlier books, hints of Slytherin's complexity abound. In Half-Blood Prince, Snape's bravery is concealed in shadows, his loyalty a riddle. His actions ultimately redefine what it means to be a Slytherin. The bravest man Harry ever knew was not a Gryffindor, but a snake. In Chamber of Secrets, when Dumbledore tells Harry that "it is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities," he affirms the book's moral universe, one that values decisions over destinies. One of the most damning consequences of the film's portrayal is the lasting cultural shorthand that emerged. Slytherins are cowards. Memes, jokes, and casual remarks across fandoms perpetuated this idea, but for those who read the books closely, it's a falsehood, a betrayal not by the students in green, but by a film-making choice that simplified for the sake of drama. The very purpose of the Sorting Hat's annual warnings was to break these stereotypes. "Don't divide," it warns in every song. Characters like Andromeda Tonks, born a black, raised a Slytherin, but defiant of her family's blood politics, remind us that a house does not determine heart. She marries a Muggle-born, raises a daughter who dies fighting Voldemort, and shelters Harry after the loss of his godfather. Her actions scream louder than any house affiliation, and yet, in the movie's narrow lens, Slytherin becomes shorthand for danger, a visual cue to be locked away just in case. The truth is, every house had its cowards and its fighters. Not every Hufflepuff stayed, not every Gryffindor rose to glory. The books offer a far more egalitarian image. Even Percy Weasley, a Gryffindor, betrayed his family before seeking redemption. Even Zacharias Smith, a Hufflepuff, is portrayed as self-centered and unwilling to fight. The battle was never house against house, it was light against dark, and light burned in every common room, even in the dungeons. The idea of collective punishment runs counter to everything Dumbledore stood for. It is not justice, but fear. To round up a quarter of the school and detain them because of possible treason is not the Hogwarts he cherished. In fact, it reflects the very authoritarian impulse he warned against, the one Voldemort embraced and Fudge enabled. Dumbledore's trust in the individual, his relentless belief in choice, is undermined by such scenes. Rowling never sanctioned this interpretation. When Slughorn arrives with reinforcements, he does not bring cowards in chains, he brings students who made their own decisions. His return is a quiet rebellion against the assumption that Slytherin stands with Voldemort. He comes not as a spy or a prisoner, but as a teacher, leading the willing. His presence in the final battle is a quiet but firm declaration. Not all Slytherins hide in dungeons. Some walk into fire. There is poetic injustice in how the film reduced an entire house to villains in waiting. The books tried so hard to rise above such simplicity. Rowling's magic lies not in black and white, but in grey. Her stories are not morality plays. They are mirrors. In turning Slytherin into a cautionary tale, the film denies readers the hope that even the ambitious, even the cunning, even the cautious can be noble. This misrepresentation also steals something essential from young viewers who see themselves in Slytherin traits. The quiet strategist, the perfectionist, the ambitious dreamer. In the books, these qualities are paths to greatness. In the film's final battle, they become red flags. What message does it send to a child who identifies with ambition? That they are inherently suspect? That they belong in the basement when the fighting begins? Perhaps the tragedy lies not in what the film chose to show, but in what it chose to omit. A battle, not just of wands, but of character. A moment when unity triumphed over tribalism. A chapter that proved Hogwarts was more than 4 rival houses. It was a home, flawed and magical, capable of teaching even the proudest Slytherin that bravery is not a Gryffindor monopoly. It is a universal virtue, and in Rowling's world, everyone had the right to claim it. Number 22. Draco Malfoy's redemption. In the heat of the final battle, as fire rained through the shattered ceilings of Hogwarts and spells flew like arrows across the sky, the film Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 created a scene that never existed in J.K. Rowling's written word. There, in the smoky aftermath of battle, Harry Potter extends Draco Malfoy his wand, an act that looks like forgiveness, maybe even a silent blessing. Draco accepts it with a glance that speaks volumes, about hesitation, about regret, about a supposed transformation that never truly occurred in the books. That moment, though cinematically powerful, belongs entirely to the invention of the filmmakers. It suggests a redemptive arc for Draco Malfoy, which the novels never intended. Throughout the Harry Potter books, Draco Malfoy remains a figure of cowardice and privilege, wrapped in entitlement and lacking the courage to act decisively. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, when faced with the task of murdering Albus Dumbledore, Draco hesitates, not because of a moral epiphany, but because he is terrified. Draco, you are not a killer," Dumbledore tells him. And indeed, Draco is not, but he is also not a hero. He does not lower his wand out of love or conscience, but out of paralyzing fear. The choice to spare Dumbledore, such as it is taken from him by Severus Snape. Yet in the movie adaptations, viewers often interpret Draco's reluctance as a quiet sign of nobility emerging through the darkness. The greatest divergence from canon comes not with Draco's hesitation, but with the way the film inserts a thread of redemption during the Battle of Hogwarts. A pivotal moment arrives when Harry, having survived death and returned to life, is seen handing a wand, Malfoy's wand, back to him. In this version, the camera lingers on Draco's expression, conflicted, uncertain, emotional. He takes the wand like a man who has been given a second chance, as though he understands the gravity of Harry's act. In the minds of many viewers, this simple exchange is a transformative gesture, casting Draco as a boy on the brink of change. But this moment is a fabrication. It does not exist in the books. What does exist, however, is far more bleak. When Harry rescues Draco from certain death in the Room of Requirement, where cursed fire devours everything in its path, the act is never acknowledged. Alongside Blaise Zabini and Goyle, Draco finds himself surrounded by flames he cannot control. It is Harry, Ron, and Hermione who fly to their rescue. Harry grabs Draco by the collar and pulls him onto a broomstick, saving his life with no hesitation. And yet, as Rowling writes in Deathly Hallows, there was no need to tell Malfoy to hold on tight. Harry could feel his damp, cold hand clutching his wrist. There is no thank you, no meaningful look exchanged. Draco simply survives, as silent and sullen as ever. Even after being saved twice, once in the astronomy tower by Snape and again in the Room of Requirement by Harry, Draco never sheds his cowardice. He remains caught between two worlds, too frightened to commit to Voldemort, yet too weak to oppose him. He is neither villain nor hero, merely a boy raised on fear and blood superiority. The books portray him as someone who cannot rise above his upbringing, not because he is inherently evil, but because he lacks the moral strength. The films, on the other hand, grant him a sort of tragic grace. They offer him the dignity of growth that the books deny. In the book's epilogue, when we see Draco on platform 9 3/4 with his wife and son, there is no moment of connection, no exchange of words with Harry. Rowling writes, Draco Malfoy caught sight of Harry and they looked at each other briefly. That's it. There's no brotherhood forged in fire, no silent pact of mutual respect. Just two men who lived through war, looking past one another like survivors, nodding at a distant echo. Yet, in the film, the visual language lingers again. Draco's glance is almost soft, his expression suggesting recognition, even gratitude. But that's a filmic flourish, not a literary truth. It's not that readers were blind to Draco's humanity. Rowling paints him not as a villain to be vanquished, but as a symbol of what fear and upbringing can do to a person. He is trapped in a gilded cage of his parents' ideology. Lucius Malfoy is disgraced, Narcissa quietly brave in her own way, but Draco remains lost. Even in the final pages of the novel, when Voldemort calls for him to cross the battlefield and stand among the Death Eaters, Draco walks with hesitation. Draco had his back to them, Rowling writes, but he seemed to hesitate, then continued slowly forward. Not defiance, not loyalty, just fear. The idea that Draco would switch sides or even want to has no grounding in the original text. His passivity is not neutrality, it's paralysis. At no point does he take a stand. He does not fight for Voldemort, but he does not fight against him either. He hides in the shadows, he obeys his family's expectations, and when the war ends, he survives by virtue of others' choices, not his own. The film's silent implication that Harry and Draco share a mutual respect, that they are equals across the battlefield, is poetic, but unfounded. Even when Harry uses Draco's wand after escaping Malfoy Manor, there's no special weight to it. It is simply a wand won in combat. It has no emotional significance beyond utility. But in the film, the fact that Harry later returns the wand becomes symbolic, as if Harry is acknowledging Draco's worth. That cinematic moment, again, is invented. In the book, Harry never returns the wand. He uses it as he must, and when the war ends, he seeks to repair his own wand with the Elder Wand. Draco's wand is just a tool, a footnote in Harry's larger quest. One of the most romanticized aspects of Draco's portrayal in fan culture stems directly from these film moments. Tom Felton's nuanced performance, soft eyes, trembling hands, gave Draco a depth the script only hinted at. His portrayal suggested inner conflict, remorse, even desire for change. But this was performance, not text. Rowling did not give Draco a redemption arc. She gave him survival and silence. The film version of the final battle indulges in visual metaphors. Draco is shown standing apart from the other Death Eaters. He does not fight, nor does he flee. He simply exists, frozen by indecision. But to casual viewers, this feels like quiet rebellion. They interpret his inaction as protest, his silence as guilt. And when he walks away from the Dark Lord's side in the film, some see it as bravery. Yet in the book, when Draco is called to Voldemort's side, he obeys. He walks through the crowd, steps past the dead, and rejoins his parents. Not a hero, just a boy seeking safety. There's a danger in rewriting characters through cinematic suggestion. While film adaptations often condense or interpret, this particular change carries thematic weight. It alters not only the character's arc, but the moral fabric of the story. Draco is not meant to be redeemed. He is meant to represent the reality that not everyone rises to heroism. Some people just survive, and that too is part of war. The emotional resonance of Draco receiving the wand in the film changes how audiences perceive the relationship between him and Harry. It suggests closure, peace, maybe even an unspoken bond. But that bond never existed in the books. Harry never trusted Draco, and Draco never truly respected Harry. Their interactions were shaped by jealousy, fear, and ideological divide. They were not rivals who learned to understand each other. They were simply boys on opposite sides of history. Draco's one moment of silent humanity in the book comes not through an act of bravery but through absence. He does not kill, does not speak out, does not fight. He slips away after the battle, uncelebrated and unnoticed, and that is intentional. Rowling did not want every character to have a dramatic arc. Some, like Draco, were meant to remain morally ambiguous. That is the cost of growing up in the wrong story. When Narcissa lies to Voldemort about Harry's death, she does so not for honor, but for her son. That is the only true act of rebellion the Malfoys ever make, and it comes from a mother's love, not a son's courage. Draco benefits from this act, as he has benefited from many before, but he does not initiate it. He is protected, shielded, spared. And when the war ends, he does not emerge transformed, only older. To imagine that Draco found redemption in that final battle is to impose a fantasy onto the text. The story Rowling told is one where not all wounds heal and not all people change. Draco Malfoy was a boy molded by fear who never found the strength to break his own mold. That is not tragedy, that is truth, and it makes Harry's choice to save him again and again all the more powerful. Because Harry did not do it for gratitude, he did it because it was right. The illusion of Draco's change is not born from words, but from looks, those fleeting glances crafted by the film's direction, enhanced by Felton's subtle performance. But a glance is not a transformation, a pause is not a turning point, and a borrowed wand is not a token of friendship. These are cinematic tricks, beautiful lies whispered in firelight. They make for good cinema, but they are not canon. Harry never needed Draco's thanks. He never expected his enemies to become friends. His mercy was never transactional. And perhaps that's why the invented redemption of Draco Malfoy stings so much, because it replaces quiet moral conviction with dramatic symmetry. It gives Draco something he did not earn. In doing so, it steals a little from Harry, and it asks us to forget that some silences are not signs of growth, but of absence. Draco Malfoy did not change, he survived. And that is the story the books told. Number 23, Hermione erases her parents' memories. Of all the scenes created for the Harry Potter films, one has embedded itself so deeply in the collective memory of fans that it is often misremembered as a moment taken directly from J.K. Rowling's original pages. It is the haunting image of Hermione Granger standing alone in her family's living room, wand trembling in her hand, eyes flooded with tears, as she casts a spell to erase herself from the lives of her parents. The room subtly transforms. Photographs rearrange themselves, her presence vanishes, and with it, the evidence that she ever existed in that house. It's a breathtakingly sad scene, made all the more powerful by the music, the silence that follows, and the weight of unspoken love and sacrifice. But for all its emotional resonance, it is a cinematic invention. This unforgettable moment never appeared in the book. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Hermione does indeed take drastic action to protect her parents from the dangers looming ahead. The wizarding world is descending into war. Voldemort is rising. No one is safe, least of all the families of known Muggle-born witches and wizards. But Rowling offers us only a brief explanation, less than a paragraph, about what Hermione has done. On page 95 of the Bloomsbury edition, Hermione simply states, "I've also modified my parents' memories so that they're convinced they're really called Wendell and Monica Wilkins, and that their life's ambition is to move to Australia, which they have now done." There are no scenes, no vanishing photographs, no aching goodbyes. Just this flat, pragmatic confession. Yet the visual poetry of the film's sequence left such an impact that even seasoned readers now struggle to separate it from canon. This is the power of film, to take a subtle line of exposition and breathe life into it with sorrowful lighting, carefully framed shots, and the quiet heartbreak of a character's silence. Emma Watson's portrayal of Hermione in that moment is delicate and restrained. There are no screams or breakdowns, just a young woman understanding exactly what is being lost and what she must give up in order to do what is right. The memory of that scene has woven itself so tightly into the mythology of Harry Potter that it has, for many, replaced the actual source material. Ask any fan about Hermione's greatest sacrifice, and many will cite this moment, not realizing that it was never described by Rowling. The film's choice to dramatize it changed how readers feel about Hermione's storyline. It framed her as someone who had already suffered a personal loss before the journey even began. In doing so, the filmmakers added emotional gravity to her character arc without rewriting any facts, only expanding on them. The difference between a line of exposition and a lived emotional experience is vast. In the book, we are told. In the film, we are shown. Hermione's line about her parents in the book is nestled between strategic discussions and practical matters. It is Hermione as we know her, efficient, careful, unflinchingly rational. But the film dares to explore the emotional cost behind that rationality. It forces us to ask what it would feel like to remove yourself from the minds of the people who raised you, to voluntarily become a stranger in the eyes of those who love you most. This contrast illustrates a broader phenomenon. The adaptation of literature into film often requires emotional compression or expansion. Some scenes must be cut, others must be expanded, and in rare cases, moments that never existed on the page are invented entirely. The memory wipe scene is one of these rare inventions, and it is a testament to its power that it feels so canon. Not because it contradicts the book, but because it makes tangible what the book only implies. J.K. Rowling's Hermione is defined by intellect and action. She fights for house elves, organizes Dumbledore's army, and risks her life repeatedly. Her courage is not dramatic, it is constant. The film, by inserting the memory charms scene, grants her a quiet heroism that is often overshadowed by louder, more obvious forms of bravery. The choice to protect her parents by removing herself from their lives is an act of love that remains invisible to them, and that invisibility is what makes it so devastating. When discussing the scene with others, it's common to hear things like, "Remember when Hermione wiped her parents' memories in the book?" People swear they've read it. They can picture the photographs disappearing, her name vanishing from the family albums, but that moment was never described in ink. The mind fills in the blanks. The film becomes memory. The invented scene becomes indistinguishable from truth. This conflation speaks to the emotional hunger of the audience. We crave to understand what our heroes lose, not just what they fight for. Hermione's scene gave us that understanding. Her sacrifice, subtly outlined in the book, became heartbreakingly visible in the film. It reminds us that the cost of war is not just death and danger, but erasure, disconnection, and silence. What makes this misunderstanding so widespread is its subtlety. The film does not announce that it is adding something new. It does not break from tone or pacing. It integrates the scene so flawlessly that it feels as though it must have always been there. And perhaps, in some way, it always was, in the emotional logic of Hermione's character, if not in the literal text. The scene also does something essential for the pacing of the film. It sets the tone. Before Harry is hunted, before the trio flees, before the Ministry falls, the audience is made to feel what's at stake. Not through exposition or warnings, but through the look in Hermione's eyes as she disappears from the lives of the only family she's ever known. It is important to note that the filmmakers did not have to create this scene. They could have easily referenced her decision in dialogue just as the book does, but they chose instead to give her silence, to let the audience feel the weight of the choice. That silence echoes long after the scene ends. It is more powerful than any explanation could have been. This choice altered the way fans relate to Hermione. In the books, she is already beloved for her intellect, her loyalty, and her bravery. But this added moment reframes her as someone who has already experienced grief, someone who carries private pain without complaint. It is an emotional thread that binds her even more tightly to the audience. In some ways, the invention is a gift. It gives us insight into a version of Hermione that Rowling might have imagined, but chose not to dwell on. It enriches our understanding without contradicting anything in the source material. It walks the fine line between adaptation and invention with rare grace. But it also reminds us of the porous border between book and film, between memory and story, between what we read and what we feel. It is easy to forget the difference when the feeling is so real, when the image is so vivid. The mind blends sources, the heart follows where it's led. The scene also raises a profound question that the books never confront directly. What happens when Hermione reunites with her parents? How does that conversation go? Do they forgive her? Do they remember her? Do they ever truly understand the danger that prompted her to do such a thing? The film does not answer these questions. The book barely hints at them, but the scene forces us to ask. And in asking, we feel her loneliness more sharply. In the end, the memory wipe scene becomes more than a cinematic addition. It becomes a mirror of all the sacrifices made in silence, all the wounds carried alone. It is not in the book, but it is in the spirit of the book, and that is why it endures. That is why it feels like canon. There are few inventions in the Harry Potter films as emotionally resonant, as seamlessly integrated, or as widely misremembered as this. It stands as a testament to how well film can complement literature. It does not replace the text, nor does it try to. Instead, it shows us the cost of a choice that the book only tells us about. It gives form to heartbreak. And in doing so, it gives Hermione a moment of silent glory that even the brightest spell could never erase. Number 24. Harry and Ginny's first kiss. Of all the magical elements introduced in the Harry Potter films, few are as curiously misremembered as the first kiss between Harry Potter and Ginny Weasley. For many fans who watched the movies first, that silent, oddly muted scene in the Room of Requirement from Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince lingers in their minds as a canonical moment. Yet upon turning the pages of J.K. Rowling's sixth book, they are met with a strikingly different vision, a vibrant, emotional, and joyful chapter in Harry's life. The contrast is not a matter of minor details, but of spirit, character, and atmosphere. The film's version is not just compressed, it feels as if someone has wrung all the warmth out of the scene, leaving behind a hollow imitation of what Rowling crafted with deliberate care. In the movie, the kiss is portrayed with a kind of hushed reverence, as though Ginny was some ghostly vision stepping silently through shadows. After hiding the Half-Blood Prince's potions textbook, she turns to Harry in near total silence and presses her lips to his. Harry barely reacts. He stands still, almost dazed, as though unsure whether he's meant to participate. There is no real joy, no sparks, no warmth. It's as if the moment were being tiptoed around like a secret kept from the audience, rather than shared with them. The music swells and the kiss ends in awkward quiet, hidden from all, even from Ron and Hermione, but this portrayal strips the moment of its emotional payoff. It feels out of place, emotionally stunted, and lacks the communal delight Rowling so clearly intended. The book offers a very different memory. Rowling builds toward their connection gradually, allowing the reader to feel Harry's growing admiration for Ginny, not just as Ron's sister, but as a girl who is fierce, independent, and refreshingly blunt. He notices her confidence, her popularity, her cleverness on the Quidditch field. Slowly, almost reluctantly, Harry acknowledges that his feelings have shifted. There's no sudden declaration, no grand cinematic pause. It's human, it's confusing, and it's real. Rowling doesn't rush to the kiss. She makes us wait because she knows the reward is richer for the delay. It is during a celebratory moment, after Gryffindor wins the Quidditch Cup, that the kiss finally happens in the book. Harry, newly appointed captain in Katie Bell's absence, leads his team to a thunderous victory, scoring the final goal himself. The common room erupts in wild celebration with Fred and George-style chaos reigning over the fireplace. Laughter and cheers fill the air. Amid the jubilation, Ginny barrels into his arms, and without thinking, without planning, Harry kisses her. It is not hidden, it is not hesitant, it is public, triumphant and spontaneous, surrounded by their cheering housemates, their friends grinning and catcalling and laughing. As Rowling writes, Harry looked around. There was Ginny running toward him. She had a hard, blazing look in her face as she threw her arms around him, and without thinking, without planning it, without worrying about the fact that 50 people were watching, Harry kissed her. There is no trace of awkwardness here, no uncertain pause, no need for whispered secrecy. Rowling makes it a celebration, not just of love, but of courage, of teenage life, of victory earned and joy shared. The book doesn't shy away from the emotional depth of the moment. It leans in, it gives the characters room to feel, to express, to be vulnerable. And Harry, who has lived in the shadow of so many burdens, is finally allowed a moment of happiness without guilt or fear. Even Ron's reaction in the book is more layered and human than the version we're shown on screen. As Rowling describes it, Ron was watching from across the room. His expression was not as dark as Harry had feared. He was actually grinning. This is important. It is the author giving permission not only to Harry and Ginny, but to the reader. Ron's approval is the final thread tying everything together, the unspoken message that this love is not forbidden or scandalous. It's natural, it's good, it's earned. By contrast, the film's decision to isolate the kiss, to shroud it in dim lighting and hushed tones, robs it of that sense of celebration. It feels clinical. Worse, it feels unearned. The relationship between Harry and Ginny is barely touched upon in the earlier films. Her growth from shy, stammering girl to confident, witty young woman is left mostly off-screen. The audience isn't given time to understand why Harry would fall for her, and so when the kiss arrives, it seems to drift in from nowhere. The emotional investment is absent, and so too is the impact. In the book, Ginny is not a passive figure. She's assertive, funny, and brave. She is the one who stands up to Draco Malfoy, who questions Harry's decisions, who battles at the Department of Mysteries. She is never portrayed as someone waiting silently for Harry to notice her. Instead, she lives her own life, dates other boys, and builds her own identity. Harry's feelings grow out of that independence. He doesn't fall for a shadow. He falls for someone who challenges him, who surprises him, who exists beyond his orbit. The film reduces her to a whisper of a character. Her independence is dulled, her fiery personality is softened. She drifts beside Harry, speaking little, doing less. When she kisses him, it is quiet, muted, without context. It doesn't feel like a culmination, it feels like a box, checked, an obligation fulfilled. The viewer might even miss it, blink, and it's gone. And that perhaps is the greatest disservice to the characters and to the fans. What Rowling gives us in the books is not just a kiss, it is a moment of convergence. Harry, who has spent so much of his life in secrecy and loss, is finally given a space to feel joy, to feel love, to feel chosen. It is not just about romance, it's about emotional freedom. When he kisses Ginny in front of everyone, he chooses light over darkness, celebration over solitude. The war is still raging, the stakes still impossibly high, but here, just for this moment, he is allowed to be a boy in love. The crowd around them doesn't vanish. The kiss isn't a secret between two people hidden behind a curtain. No, it is out in the open, in front of all the housemates who have journeyed with them, Dean Thomas, Seamus Finnegan, Neville Longbottom, and even Lavender Brown. It's not a whisper, it's a roar. The readers, too, feel that catharsis. They've seen Harry grow, hurt, fight, and lose. Now they see him gain something. It matters. That is why so many readers, when reflecting on that scene, feel a pang of disappointment in the film adaptation. It is not that the kiss itself was badly shot or acted, it is that it was stripped of its emotional core. It was made into something it was never meant to be, quiet, sterile, forgettable. What should have been a triumphant cry of youthful affection was turned into a murmured whisper of uncertainty. Even the placement of the kiss matters. In the film it happens while they're hiding a dangerous object, a secret meeting in a shadowed room. It suggests danger, fear, secrecy. In the book it happens in light, in celebration, in full view. These are not minor differences, they reflect two completely different understandings of what that kiss was meant to signify. One sees love as a risk, the other sees it as a reward. Harry's internal monologue in the book also gives us insight. He does not simply act, he feels, he worries about Ron, he questions his feelings, he fights with himself over his desire to be near Ginny. These layers make the eventual kiss feel like a release, not just of passion, but of tension. When it finally happens, we understand why it matters. The movie offers no such build-up, no such internal war. The kiss is just there. When fans mistakenly remember the film version as canon, they are unknowingly erasing one of the most joyful, most human moments in Harry's entire journey. They are replacing laughter with silence, warmth with coldness, community with secrecy. And they do so because the film gave them no alternative. But the book gives them something better, something alive. The kiss in Half-Blood Prince is not about romance alone. It is a symbol of everything Harry has fought for: connection, love, the right to choose his own happiness. It is the moment he stops being merely the chosen one and becomes simply Harry. Not a hero, not a martyr, but a 17-year-old boy who just won a game and kissed the girl he loves. This is the Harry that Rowling wanted us to see. The boy who finds light in dark times, the boy who laughs, who celebrates, who feels, the boy who deserves joy. The movie took that boy away, replaced him with a colder, more muted version. But the book preserves him, whole and radiant, for those who remember to look. And Ginny, in the book, is not a mysterious shadow. She is fierce, alive, blazing. The look on her face as she rushes toward Harry, a hard, blazing look, is not one of hesitation. It is determination, fire, passion. It is the embodiment of everything Ginny Weasley is. The film makes her quiet. The book makes her unforgettable. This is why the difference matters. Not for the sake of accuracy, but for the sake of meaning. When we forget the book's version, we forget what that kiss truly represented. We forget the joy, the noise, the warmth, and in doing so, we forget who Harry truly is. Not a boy whispered to in the dark, but one cheered for in the light. Number 25. Voldemort's cinematic death. The final battle had been fierce, a maelstrom of magic and blood and screams echoing through the ruins of Hogwarts. And in the movie, it all builds to that climactic moment. Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort face each other in a whirlwind of spells and fury. Their wands clash, their powers ripple through the air. Then Voldemort begins to unravel, literally. His flesh shreds into fragments, his features twist and crumble. And finally, like ashes scattered on the wind, he is no more. The camera follows the drifting remains of the Dark Lord as they vanish into the pale dawn sky. It is haunting, artistic, and undeniably cinematic. But it is also entirely untrue. In the book, Voldemort dies with far less spectacle, and that is the point. He doesn't vanish, he doesn't dissolve, he doesn't disappear into the ether as if he had been some phantom of fear rather than flesh. When Harry defeats him, when the Elder Wand refuses to harm its true master, Tom Riddle dies a death that is deliberately, even brutally, ordinary. His body falls, it lands with a finality that is stark, jarring. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality. Rowling writes in Harry Potter and The Deathly Hallows, his body lay spread-eagled, pale and thin, the arms and legs outstretched, the eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. That is how evil ends, not in fire and glory, but in silence. It matters more than many viewers of the film understand, because Rowling did not craft Voldemort as an ethereal force that could be swept away like a shadow. At sunrise, she wrote him as a man, a twisted, broken man who feared death so much he mutilated his soul to escape it, a man who clung to prophecy and power, who feared love, who killed without remorse, but a man nonetheless. The final insult to his life's obsession is that death came for him in the same way it comes for anyone. No magic, no immortality, just stillness and gravity. When the film chooses to let him disintegrate into nothingness, it robs the scene of its philosophical weight. The viewers watch and feel awe, but not the chill of truth. In Rowling's universe, the core message of the final book is the triumph of mortality accepted over immortality sought. Harry, who walks into the forest ready to die, wins. Voldemort, who kills and manipulates to avoid death, loses. This moral, this narrative symmetry, demands that Voldemort's end be grounded in the human. The movie's depiction feeds the fantasy that Voldemort was something other than human, that perhaps he had transcended life, that his evil had elevated him into myth. But Rowling took pains to do the opposite. Even his name, Tom Marvolo Riddle, is a reminder of who he was. A boy from a Muggle orphanage, a brilliant, bitter child who believed he was better than the world around him. A man who constructed his own legend and believed in it. To let him drift away like ash is to give him too much. That final sentence from Rowling is cold in its simplicity. And Harry stood with two wands in his hand, staring down at the shell of the man who had once been Tom Riddle. It is a sentence designed to bring us down from the high of battle, to force us to look not at a monster but at a corpse. The power of that image lies in its normalcy. Voldemort dies like any other man because, in the end, that is all he ever was. The contrast is jarring. In the film, when he unravels into dust, it almost feels like redemption, like the world itself is erasing him. There's a visual poetry to it, sure, but no honesty. It is spectacle in place of truth. That's not what Rowling wanted. The body must remain. Evil must have a face, and that face must be mortal. Only then can we understand that Voldemort's horror lay not in being something more than human, but in choosing to be something less. Even in his final moments, Voldemort in the book clings to denial. He refuses to believe the wand is not his. He tries to kill Harry with it, sneering at the idea that power could betray him. But power does. The Elder Wand, loyal not to him but to Draco Malfoy and then to Harry, will not kill its master. The spell rebounds. Voldemort dies by his own hand, by his own hubris. His final breath is not a scream, but a silence so heavy that it fills the great hall. The movie does not give him a body to bury. That, too, changes everything. In the book, Voldemort's corpse lies among the rest. The heroes and the villains, Fred Weasley, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, Bellatrix Lestrange. Death claims them all equally. This juxtaposition is essential. Rowling's battlefield is a mirror. In death, even the most powerful wizard is stripped of his illusions. There is no celebration in Voldemort's death in the book, no cheer, no dance, no joyful eruption, just a crowd in shock staring at the fallen. The silence is Rowling's final act of defiance. She denies the reader the satisfaction of spectacle, because that is not the story she is telling. It is not about revenge or violence. It is about the quiet triumph of love over fear, of truth over lies, of humility over arrogance. The choice to let Voldemort die an ordinary death also reaffirms the dignity of the other characters. Harry, for example, does not rejoice. He doesn't gloat or seek praise. He tries to explain. He tells Voldemort in those last moments about Snape's true loyalty, about the wand's allegiance, about Dumbledore's plan. He offers Voldemort the chance to show remorse. Even then, but Voldemort refuses, and that refusal leads to his fall, not just in battle, but in meaning. The moment when Voldemort dies like a man rather than a myth is Rowling's answer to the entire series' central question. What makes a person good or evil? Not blood, not power, not prophecy, but choice. Voldemort chose to become less than human in his pursuit to be more than human. He chose fear over love, domination over friendship, and in doing so ensured his end would be not glorious, but pitiful. It also connects back to Dumbledore's warning. Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love. Voldemort is the ultimate embodiment of that tragedy. His death is not pitiful because it's human. It is pitiful because of how little humanity remains in it, not because he disintegrates, but because even in a body he leaves behind nothing worth mourning. This is why Rowling's decision to describe his corpse is so important. It's uncomfortable. The body is thin, pale, awkward. The eyes are vacant. It is a reminder that no amount of Horcruxes, no magical protection, no ancient artifact can stop what death really is. Not drama, not fire, not beauty, just the end, a shell on the floor, a life extinguished. The film, in its pursuit of visual grandeur, misses this. It gives the audience a dazzling finale, but it takes away the truth. Voldemort dissolving into the wind is satisfying in a shallow sense. It feels like closure. But it's a lie. The real closure comes from accepting what Rowling shows, that death is the great equalizer, that the most feared dark wizard of all time dies just like anyone else, and that's what makes him pathetic. By letting Voldemort die like a regular man, Rowling returns the power to the living. The story ends not with death, but with survival, with rebuilding, with the knowledge that love outlasts fear. The movie lets Voldemort vanish like smoke, but Rowling ensures that he falls with a thud. That thud echoes far more loudly than any magical effect ever could. Even the setting matters. In the book, the battle ends in the Great Hall, not on some lonely cliff, not in an isolated duel, but in front of everyone. Harry wins surrounded by the survivors, by the dead, by the wounded. His victory is witnessed. The lessons are shared. Voldemort's fall is not private. It is public, and that humiliation matters. He wanted to be a legend, but he dies in front of everyone as a man. That image stays. The boy who called himself Lord becomes a corpse on the floor. The theme of bodily death echoes throughout the series. From Cedric Diggory's sudden, brutal killing in the graveyard to Dumbledore's fragile corpse atop the astronomy tower, Rowling has always insisted on the reality of mortality. She never shies away from showing the dead, because they matter, they were here, they lived, and Voldemort too lived. In denying him a dramatic death, Rowling gives him something more terrifying, insignificance. It is worth remembering that the entire conflict began because Voldemort could not accept death. He tore his soul apart. He built Horcruxes. He defied the natural order. But in the end, he could not escape the truth. He dies anyway, and not with a scream, not with fire, but with silence, with gravity, with the fall of flesh on stone. And that is why his death in the book matters more. It completes the circle. The boy who feared death above all things dies as a man. His fall is not glorious, it is not monstrous, it is human, and that above all is what makes him beatable.